I promise you that music will never hit the way that it hits in your sad girl era. And so if there is any silver lining that I can offer you during this time, just let it be that. What's up, little sis? You are now tuned in to another episode of the Arab and Thriving Show. I'm your host, Rima, and I want to talk to you about my sad girl phase. It was quite the sad girl phase, I will tell you. And what I learned from it, and low-key how I romanticized it, I want to help you make your sad girl era not so sad. Sometimes romanticizing it and seeing the bigger picture of how this phase fits into the rest of your joyful, happy, amazing life can help you get through it feeling a little bit more positive. So I talk about this phase in my life that I like to call like my biggest transformation phase, and it was after my dad passed away. It really was the most pivotal period of my life, not just because it was the first time I had suffered and experienced like a deep loss, but because there were other things in my life that really had to go during this time. And just to help you understand how sad my sad girl phase really was, but how I was still able to get through it and appreciate it. Like I look back on that period of my life and I don't feel sad for myself. I truly respect the way that I went through those emotions in that deep grief. Grief can come in so many different forms. It can come in the version of you that has to be put to rest in order to move on with your life. It can come from a relationship. It can come from someone in your family who has changed significantly and you don't really recognize that person. Grief will always show up in your life, even if you haven't lost somebody close to you. And it's important to know how to approach that time so that you don't let it swallow you whole. My biggest fear for most of my life was my dad passing away. He used to smoke, so it wasn't like a random, illogical, irrational fear. Like it was a real fear because I knew he was putting his health in jeopardy. And even though like things were completely fine, in February of 2017, he had to go get checked up, just a routine checkup. His knee was actually hurting him. In that routine checkup, they found out that 6 of his arteries were clogged. He needed to literally quit smoking as of yesterday, basically, is what the doctor told him. And he needed to come back in about a month and do a bypass surgery, which is a really risky surgery, but he got a really good doctor and everything was supposed to be completely fine. During this time in my life, I was in a very toxic situationship with someone I knew I had no business being with and someone I knew I wasn't going to end up with. It was a dark period of my life where I was kind of just escaping. The person that I was closest friends with at the time was also kind of escaping. So she and I, we'd been friends since high school. We were super close. We both were kind of going through this escapist phase together. And if you've ever had a friend who is going through kind of toxic cycles with you, you know that you're not always the best influence on each other, no matter how much you love that person, no matter how much you care to have them in your life. Both of us were not good influences on each other. Again, I was in this very toxic relationship where I felt like I wasn't getting the love and respect that I deserve. My dad gets told he needs to go into this life-threatening surgery, and I'm already stressed as hell. I remember I rearranged my whole bedroom that day. I just started cleaning out of nowhere. I started crying that night, even though everyone said everything was fine. People were trying to make it seem like everything was okay. I was extremely stressed out. Fast forward to March. My dad does his surgery. It is hours long. Doctor comes out. Everything went amazing, better than planned. My dad did so well. The doctor did so well. My dad gets put into the ICU to recover. He literally transitions from the ICU to like the normal part of the hospital in the shortest amount of time. We get to take him home. Everything is on the up and freaking up, okay? When I tell you this story and the way things played out gave me so many psychological issues. Everything is on the up and up. We bring him home. He's recovering at home. We're able to be surrounded by so much family. People who hadn't seen my dad in years were coming to visit. Like, it was just a beautiful, amazing time. And I am forever grateful that we had that time, because one day when we were supposed to go to Costco the next morning as a family, it would have been our first outing as a family after my dad was recovering. That night, he literally collapsed and just had a heart attack and died. Craziest part about that, by the way, is I was supposed to not be home that night. I was living somewhere else, not at my family's house anymore. I was supposed to go back home that night because my dad was doing so much better, but something made me feel like I needed to just stay another night, just to spend more time with my parents. I thought everything was fine. So when he passed that night, immediately I was like, obviously traumatized, but also extremely grateful for how it played out. And that's one point I really want to make about grief. It's not just sadness. There's so many feelings that can exist at once. And sometimes these feelings, they feel contradictory. They feel mutually exclusive. It's like, how am I so in grief and so devastated and also so grateful. I don't know if you've ever experienced that. If you've ever had a near-death experience, if you've ever gotten really sick, there's this simultaneous feeling of like angst or grief or anguish and also gratitude. And I don't think people really talk about that enough, that during my grief, after my dad passed, in the months after that, I would have these intense bouts of gratitude and joy. And I really want to talk about what that looked like for me, because my sad girl era was so sad. It was also so healing and so beautiful. And yours can look like that too, because ultimately what a sad girl era really is just you reconnecting to yourself. Yes, it's grief, but it's you figuring out what you are shedding and what you're keeping. It's you figuring out who you used to be and who you want to become, regardless what it is that you're going through, whether it's a breakup, whether it's a loss of your family like me, whether it's all of the above like me, because I broke up with the boy right after that. Bro, so many things. Broke up with the boy, broke up with the friend, dad passed away, was applying to business school, career changes. Like, it was a flux period of my life, and that in itself is just enough to cause you to reconnect, not just with yourself, but in my case with God. Like, I got so close to God during that time because I just felt like I needed that meaning. Music will never hit the same for me. I'm not saying I want to go back to that phase. I'm not saying I want someone in my family to pass away, God forbid, so that I can like my freaking music again. I'm not saying that. I'm not trying to romanticize what you're going through. I'm not trying to downplay it. I know it's hard. What I'm trying to say is there are little things that you can appreciate about the time that you're going through, even if it's the shittiest time ever. That's just how I think. I'm Mrs. Brightside, I guess. I don't know. It's not toxic positivity. It's just me choosing to find the things that I can be grateful for, regardless what I'm going through. And at that point in time, it was SZA's album, Control. That album like changed my whole life. When my dad passed away, it was March of 2017. Between 2017 and 2018, I would say were like the deepest grieving months for me. I was working at the University of Michigan at the time, driving back and forth these 45-minute drives to my job. And I would, get on I-94, it was a straight shot all the way on the highway, blast SZA, and be like singing so loud and feeling it, like really feeling it. And then out of nowhere, I would just burst out crying. Like, it was insane. It wasn't like, how you ease into a cry? No. It was like, it didn't ask for permission. It just literally like forced itself on me, where I was singing and now I'm just bawling my eyes out. And I would let myself cry alone on these car rides because I'm letting it all out. I'm letting it out. And then after I'm done crying, I'm still singing. And then I would start kind of laughing because I'm like, I look crazy. Like, if anyone is watching me right now, I literally look like I have 7 different personalities sitting in this car with me because I'm just cycling through so many emotions. I feel like those car rides were a microcosm of what it is to grieve. I feel like those car rides were truly a microcosm of a sad girl phase, because it doesn't have to just be you crying and screaming and asking God why. It can also be you laughing at some of the pain. I don't know if you're like me, I laugh at myself a lot. I make dark humor every here and there because laughter is so healing for me. But I think the key is you feel everything. You let yourself feel everything. And for me, music was such a way of me letting myself feel things that I didn't even realize I was feeling. And it wasn't always about my dad. Sometimes it was about the relationship that I was cycling out of. Sometimes it was about the misunderstandings in my past friendships that I was grieving and crying about. Like, it wasn't always about one thing. It was just everything, everywhere, all at once. And I'm so grateful that I let myself feel those things. I really think it has shaped the way that I deal with adversity and conflict moving forward. The analogy that I want to give you, if you'll allow it, is if your brain was a Pinterest board. I don't know if you know this, but the higher your emotion, the more likely you will store a moment as a memory. I don't know about you. There are so many things I've forgotten in school because that shit was boring. Like, there was no emotion attached to it. I don't remember many things that I learned in my hours and hours and hours and hours of being in a classroom. But if I do point at the moments that I do remember from high school, which at this point in my life was literally like half of my life ago, it's the moments that had an emotion attached to it. Either I got really embarrassed, I was praised, so I was really proud of myself, I was really afraid of whether I was gonna fail a test or not, whatever it may be. When you look back on your life, you know that your memories, what really stores them in your brain is the emotion that is attached to it. So I don't know how to break it to you, but you're going to remember the sad girl phase. It is so sad and emotional that you are going to remember a lot of it. And so if your brain was a Pinterest board, okay, and your memories were little pins that you're storing in your brain, how would you want this phase to be stored in your brain? Like, that's how I want you to think about it. Again, some of it could be the sad, candlelit nights where you're crying and journaling, but that's a freaking vibe. Like, that belongs on a Pinterest board. When you really think about it, like when you zoom out and look at it like that, it's no longer depressing. It's low-key a vibe, The Spotify Sad Girls playlist, like, that's kind of a vibe. Again, I'm not trying to romanticize being sad. I just think everything has its place. Every emotion has its place. And when you look at it from a position of how do I want to write this chapter in my story? I think it helps you disconnect from the overwhelm of feeling those things. And it helps you just allow yourself to feel them without all of that judgment attached to it. Treat your phase like a Pinterest board and really be intentional about how you want to go through this phase. How do you want this chapter to be written in the rest of your life? How do you want to be able to talk about this years down the line? To help you do that, I want you to think of very healthy coping mechanisms. Once again, for me, music was definitely a coping mechanism of mine. I loved sad music. I'm telling you right now, when I listen to SZA and Summer Walker, part of me is like, there's parts of these songs I used to access differently. Like, it used to feel different. Don't get me wrong, the music is still great. It just doesn't hit the same, So music was truly a coping mechanism. Same thing with the gym. I used to be on that Stairmaster. And sometimes I used to be crying on that Stairmaster because I would be sweating so much, so you couldn't really tell that I was crying. But also, it's like, now when I get on the Stairmaster, I'm bored because I'm in this healthy ass relationship and I'm just like, who am I trying to look cute for? I'm just kidding. I want to look cute for him too, but it's just different. Like, I was just going through it at the gym. So the gym was this channel. Now it's like, I'm not going through it anymore. So the gym is just this obligation. And I feel like I need to work on my mindset around that to make it fun again. But at the time, those coping mechanisms, the healthy ones, they became so much more fun, especially in the absence of the unhealthy coping mechanisms that I got rid of. The relationship that wasn't healthy, the friendships that weren't healthy, the nights out that were really just, there's nothing wrong with going out, but for me, they were rooted in this place of like wanting that validation. And so when I took that and channeled it into healthy things, it helped my sad girl phase have so much more meaning and purpose. And it helped me come out of it kind of feeling like it was productive instead of just this mopey phase that I was in where I wasn't getting closer to myself. I'm not saying you need to go and like pursue 5 degrees while you're sad. All I'm saying is like, it's productive if you allow it to be a phase where you get closer to who you are and who you're meant to be, not judging your emotions. This is the most important thing that I really want you to employ. When I was grieving, I kept gaslighting myself. I kept saying, am I supposed to feel this way? Do I talk about it too much? Am I writing about it too much? Am I supposed to be over it by now? Why am I feeling this every day? Am I being too dramatic? Like, I kept like judging how much I was grieving, and I wish someone just shook me and told me to just let myself feel. And I really think that's why my bouts of joy and bouts of crying and bouts of whatever were so intense, because I think my body was like not trying to give me time to rationalize it, and it was just forcing that emotion out of me because I think I was being a little resistant to it. And I think for you, what I would love is for you to not judge it. If you're writing in your journal, write it. Whatever you're feeling, write it. Whatever you're thinking, write it. Like, don't feel like you need to put your thoughts and your feelings through this intense scrutinizing filter of, am I supposed to be feeling this way? I had a friend when her dad passed away unexpectedly. She kept saying, my dad abandoned me. And I remember feeling like, that's not true. Your dad didn't abandon you. He died. But now looking, and I never said that because I'm not stupid. I'm not going to tell someone how to feel. But looking back, I'm like, I appreciate her so much for using the language that felt raw to her at that time, because at the end of the day, if that's how she felt, whether it's true or not, that is how she was grieving. She needed to acknowledge that she felt abandoned in order for her to heal whatever that was. So it doesn't matter how you feel. If someone passed away and you're angry at them, instead of rationalizing it, feeling like, I don't have a right to be angry at them, at the end of the day, you feel anger. So it's not helpful for you to suppress that. You're not going to get rid of it by suppressing it. You're only going to work through it by acknowledging it. So regardless what you're going through, don't feel like you need to ask permission to have the feelings that you have. Of course, you should think before you react off of those feelings. So if you're mad at your ex, don't go like key his car, obviously. But yeah, write it down. And if you had the urge to key his car, write that down so that you don't go and actually do it. And instead go and talk to someone about the fact that you wanted to do it. But the key point here is just let yourself feel those things and let those emotions truly be a compass into how you're supposed to heal, what you're supposed to focus on so that you can heal. I love you so, so, so much. This doesn't have to be the worst period of your life. I swear to God, when you look at what happened on paper, that was supposed to be the worst period of my life. 2017 and 2018 was supposed to eat me alive. I look back on those days and I truly don't feel like they were the worst periods of my life. Like, I honestly miss certain parts of it. I miss the feelings that I had. I miss how it felt to heal from certain things. I miss the strength that I learned about myself during that time. I miss how proud of myself I felt when I wasn't going into toxic patterns. There was so much about that time period that I feel grateful for. And I really think it's because I was able to romanticize this period of my life and not allow it to swallow me whole, and instead try to take charge of what I wanted it to look like in my journey, how I wanted to use that to ultimately bring me closer to myself and who I wanted to become. I love you so, so, so much. Let me know if you have any questions about this. And as always, stay powerful, my loves.